Presumably at different times of the day, the pool will reflect on the ceiling throughout the house.
Which has a lovely calming effect. You can just sort of sit and look at it. It ripples.
Yeah.
It's
a very calm house to be in.
Like Valium.
Yeah, that's good.
That's the original marble slab. And this was perfect for doing makeup because you get diffused light and the
mirrors
on both sides of that little cabinet, so it opened up. Shoes were always in here, so specially designed for the shoes with air vents, so the shoes don't stay fresh. Everything, of course, with Neutra is in the perfect place, so you don't have to sort of find things and move around. I mean, the trash chute in the corner is in the perfect position because if you're at the sink doing things, peeling potatoes, making juice, you realise that you can just take the trash and drop it in the chute.
Yeah, you don't have to bend down, find a bag and...
Just straight out, you can access it from outside, it has a little door, no mess, no bending down.
Don't have to take the trash through the house.
No, very perfect. Yeah, perfect.
It's fantastic that people like Catherine are prepared to spend time and money on restoring beautiful pieces of architecture, but unfortunately, not everybody feels the same way. This beautiful house was built in 1962 for art collector Luella Maslon. After her death, the house sold for nearly $2.5 million, only to be demolished 1 month later. I wonder what was going through the guy's head, why he raised it to the ground, whether it was a personal thing, was he an art terrorist? He won't answer any questions, but the Maslon house no longer exists. Astonishingly, there are no laws in California to stop this kind of thing happening. Luckily, other people are going to great lengths to save Neutra's homes. In 1934, Neutra built this house for film star Anna Sten, a Russian actress who was brought to America by Samuel Goldwyn. He wanted her to be the new Greta Garbo. Until recently, the Sten house was rotting. Thankfully, its new owners were prepared to pay for pricey restoration work. They've employed specialist architects to get every detail just right.
The ideas that Neutra was working with are just as relevant today as they were in the 30s when this house was built. That connection, that weaving or interrelationship between the interior and the exterior, those concepts are still relevant. Those are beautiful, powerful ideas of how buildings relate to the landscape.
Sometimes it takes an extraordinary effort just to make something that was off the shelf in those days. And so for the glass, for instance, we're repressing ribbed glass. And it's taken, 15 or 16 tries to get the color of the glass, the size of the ribs, the spacing of the ribs, and the texture of the glass right until it actually looks like the original glass. Now, that seems like an extraordinary effort to go through, but it's a worthwhile effort.
Almost the only way of knowing what a Neutra house should look like is to check photos from the time, chiefly the work of Julius Schulman. By copying his images, the Kaufman house has recently been returned to the natural beauty it had in 1946. During the intervening years, the house suffered. In the 1970s, it was owned by big-nosed balladeer Barry Manilow, whose decor was as cheesy as his songs. It's hard to imagine that this house was once covered in chintz and almost sold as a teardown. I think people should be allowed their own taste, but it's so great to see a house as Neutra originally intended it, full of elegance and simplicity.
Por que esperar tanto assim de alguém?
I love travelling and I get to do it a lot in my line of work. But often all I get to see when I do go abroad is a club, a taxi and the airport. Most places I take my DJ bag, I know exactly what the airport's going to be like. American terminals are often a nightmare, British ones have the best shops. But as airports go, I've always had a favourite. I think this place is a bit special. Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, j'adore. You know, I'm always slightly disappointed that the future just didn't come as fast and just didn't look quite the way I wanted it to as a kid. I never did get my bubble car or my hoverboard, but when I came here, age 4, this was Moonbase Alpha. It's what everybody in the 60s wanted the future to look like. You can't get more sci-fi than being sucked through buildings in Perspex tubes. It's how people get around in the Jetsons and Futurama. Charles de Gaulle was so futuristic that Tomorrow's World came here in 1974.
I'm now being taken away from the main airport terminal building, underneath the apron. Above the passengers at this point will be the big jets. I'm on my way to one of 7 satellite buildings to await my departure. It's quite a long way. I sure hope one of these things doesn't break down.
I love the way the future dates so quickly. There's such a small window when something looks amazing and then it looks crap. And finally, it becomes retro, which is what Charles de Gaulle is now. Parts of this airport are very much stuck in time. There's nothing more 70s than this mix of seagrass and concrete. The concrete's one of the things that I love most about Charles de Gaulle Airport. It allows these fluid, curved shapes. So often with modern architecture, there's a fine line between a building being ugly and it being beautiful. But for me, the best ones are a bit of both. Sometimes I think that if I hadn't become a DJ, I might have trained as an architect. It's something I've always been interested in. The architect of Charles de Gaulle, Paul Andrew, designed it as a machine for arrivals and departures. The whole thing's a giant intersection of cars, planes and people. To make flying more exciting, he gets you as close to the planes as possible, and by arranging everything in a circle, it means you shouldn't have to walk as far to get to your plane. Now, in theory, that sounds great. But when I was here a few weeks ago, I got lost and went round the same floor at least twice. There's a feeling here that a trail of breadcrumbs might be a good idea. A circular terminal is also impossible to extend, so they had to build a second one. Unlike British airports, which always seem to grow into a sprawling, uncoordinated mess, Paris kept a constant style by using the same architect. Andrew's newer buildings aren't as much fun, but they still look pretty smart. His latest, 2E, opened just this year, 4 years after 2F, a rare breakdown in French common sense. This building is that good that U2 filmed a video here. I'm not saying this because I'm half French, but I think in France they embrace modern architecture better than we do in Britain. It's not that they're any better at design than we are, it's just that they're more comfortable making it part of their everyday lives. At Charles de Gaulle, they even designed a typeface specially for the airport. I'm a bit of a train spotter about fonts because I'm often thinking about flyers for clubs. Frutiger is designed to be easy to read, whatever angle you see the sign from. As well as working on Charles de Gaulle for 30 years, Paul Andrew has built airports all over the world, many of which I've been through, including Nice, Jakarta and Cairo. He reckons airports are the most important buildings of our time, like cathedrals were in the Middle Ages. His have certainly got a lot more elaborate since he designed Paris Terminal 1 in his 20s. I don't think they'll ever build another airport like Terminal 1 at Charles de Gaulle. But 30 years ago, I loved it. And you know what? I still do.
Next time on Dreamspaces, is less still more or is it a bore? Check out stylish new supermarkets, the Far East's most far-out city, and Giles Peterson talking loudly about Gaudi.